This is an open letter to Geraldo Rivera. Geraldo, you wrote a book called HisPANIC. It was fueled by the now famous shouting match that you had with Bill O'Reilly over the vehicular murder of two innocent women by an illegal alien drunk driver with 3 prior convictions. Let me just say that HisPANIC is the worst book I have ever read, and that includes Valley of the Dolls and Jonathan Livingston Seagull. Worst book I have ever read, and in a series of YouTube rants I intend to prove that to be true. Because you see, people, Geraldo's book is not only dumb, it's dangerous. First, because for me it was the most personal. In your chapter on gangs, you made an unbelievably ignorant statement which grossly underestimates the impact of gangs on the average American. You said, unless you deal drugs, paint graffiti in East LA, or are extremely unlucky and get caught in their crossfire, Hispanic gangs are probably not the largest threat to you and your family. Geraldo, you know nothing of what it is like to live in a gang-infested neighborhood, as millions of legal Americans now do. You live in Malibu. Malibu, arguably one of the most idyllic spots on the planet. I spent time there. It truly is paradise on earth. The irony is, I live a few short miles from you, but it might as well be 2 different countries because of the devastating impact that gangs are having on my life. But you know, since most of Los Angeles is now infested, in the name of anonymity, let's just call the town where I live Gangville. Gangville, USA. Let me tell you what it's like living in Gangville. The first thing you do when you wake up in the morning is you go outside and see what was stolen from you in the middle of the night. Sometimes it's your tires, sometimes it's your gas, sometimes it's your car battery, sometimes it's your entire car. Sometimes they take your lawn mower or your lawn ornaments or your dirt bike or your kids' bikes or your Christmas decorations or plants, the plants you actually have planted in the ground. All these things have been stolen from me and my neighbors while we slept in gangland. But back to your moronic opening sentence to the chapter on gangs. It suggests that unless a person has direct interaction with gangs, they probably aren't a problem for the average citizen. Well, Geraldo, here's a problem. Here's 10 to 20 billion problems, because that is the estimate of how much we legal citizens of the United States pay annually to clean up taggers' graffiti. That makes me so angry, I started playing around with these rather staggering numbers. You know, it turns out that about 2.5 million eager young people trot off to college each year. All right, do you know that if we didn't have to clean up this damn tagger graffiti, and if we instead put it towards educating our youth, each of those 2.5 million kids could get $5,000 to $10,000 towards paying for their first year in college. In fact, that would pay for an entire degree from a community college. But instead, we spend it cleaning up after the gangs who are defacing our country from sea to shining sea. Oh, and Geraldo, you know, you don't sleep at night very well when you live in Gangville. Why? Well, I mean, it's nothing as cerebral as worrying, although that does cause a lot of sleepless nights. No, I mean, you don't sleep because the LAPD has a sort of preemptive strike policy of flying helicopters right over our houses almost every night, all through the night, shining these blinding searchlights into the alleys that surround our houses to try and discourage the gangs. It is deafening. You've been in war zones, Geraldo. I see my neighbors trying to explain to their kids why the roar of these choppers doesn't go away. And all of this punctuated by police sirens and car races going on up and down the streets. You don't go out a lot either, Geraldo, when you live in Gangville, not at night. No, in my neighborhood, you see, 12 Latinos have shot 12 Afro-Americans in as many months. That is a murder a month in an area that's less than 5 square miles. I think that is terrifying. And although no, I'm not black, I'm a single white female. Ever since a young woman was raped, beaten, and dumped naked in an alley just down the street from my house, which the police learned was part of a gang initiation. I don't know. I just get nervous driving around my neighborhood at night. But we're still... What about the children of American citizens? Gang recruitment is now starting as young as 8 or 9, with little kids promised big money and power and prestige and protection from other gangs. So, people, if you're listening, there's a pretty good chance that when your little boy or girl trots off to school, they're going to be interacting with gangbangers who are carrying weapons, dealing drugs, intimidating non-gang members, and from time to time shooting their little schoolmates. I have a quote here. She says, "We worry about them constantly," says Margaret Pontius, program manager at the Guadalupe Community Center. She says the younger children, when they're 8 or 9, they think it's cool to say you're part of a gang. As for the first-hand account of the gang's impact on the community, which you suggest is minimal, Geraldo, well, the Justice Department disagrees with you. And I quote, "Fear of gangs and crime is an immediate daily experience for people who live in towns and cities where gangs have become a noticeable presence. Residents report avoiding certain streets and taking long, circuitous routes to do errands just to avoid gang turf. Intimidation and shakedown of youth, adults, and business owners is not uncommon. And for witnesses preparing to testify against gangs, this intimidation often turns deadly." And listen, people, this gang nightmare, this is no longer a problem just for the big cities. Gang activity now exists in every town in America with a population of over 50,000. So that means most of the citizens of this country are being impacted. And how is this for impact on every family? In those cities and towns with gang activity, 25% of all school-going children report knowing another kid who packs a gun. So don't tell me that this isn't a threat to the average American family. Now, as for the cost to a crumbling American economy, forget that little chump change for cleaning up graffiti. What did I say, 20 billion? Listen to this. The total volume of crime is estimated to cost Americans $655 billion each year, and gangs are responsible for a substantial portion of that. And you know what? If you divide that $655 billion by the population of the United States, it amounts to well over $2,000 a head that Americans are paying for crime. And since the average American family's got about 5 members, that's nearly $10,000 a year that the average American family pays for largely gang-fueled crime. Now here's a statistic I love. A single adolescent criminal career of about 10 years will cost the taxpayers between $1.7 and $2.3 million. Here's another fun fact. An estimated 80% of the cars on the streets of El Salvador were stolen by gangs from the United States. But you know, sometimes the things they steal really hits home. Like when my new little puppy was snatched from my yard in broad daylight, as hundreds are every year, thousands across the country. And according to the LAPD, who have conducted numerous busts of dog fighting rings, only to find the grisly remains of the small dogs, there's a good chance most of these dogs, including mine, were stolen for bait and torn apart in dog fights. And there is nothing I can do about it. So this is the reality of life in gangland, Geraldo. Don't dare say it doesn't impact the average American family. Something that you love more than words can say is stolen from you, is ripped from your life and your heart by gangbangers in broad daylight. Here in gangland, life is hell, the days are terrifying, and the nights are a nightmare from which you do not wake. So Geraldo, in closing, you have no idea what you are talking about in this wretched book, HisPANIC. You owe the American people a retraction and an apology, and you owe me $24.95 plus tax.